Look, I think a lot of the estimations about what this legislation would do in a negative manner to communities in my state or any other are far overblown. I can tell you that this bill is going to be a great thing for everybody around the country, my constituents especially. What's good for Louisiana is good for America. We've got great tax policy here. I think they're going to feel this pretty quickly. Wages will rise. I think household income will go up. I think the job participation rate will increase dramatically. I think unemployment will be low. We're going to duplicate what we did in the first Trump administration. Remember, at the first 2 years, y'all have heard me say 1,000 times, it's objectively true. We had one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and we're going to do that again, except this time much more comprehensively. We did tax cuts and regulatory reform, and that brought about a resurgence of the U.S. economy. That's what's going to happen here. It's about to happen on steroids. And we can't wait for that to happen. This is jet fuel for the economy, and all boats are going to rise. Thank y'all for being here. We got to get a little rest.
What bullshit. Okay. First of all, the Donald Trump administration wasn't the greatest economy in the world. Joe Biden's was the greatest economy in the world. And it wasn't because of Donald Trump. It's because he got us out of a pandemic better than anybody else did. Pandemic that Donald Trump completely screwed up. The idea that once again, Republicans have one thing they do: cut taxes. Cutting taxes, jet fuel for the economy. My God, average Americans are going to save almost a few $100s a year. But don't worry, because the billionaires are going to save a whole lot more. That's the bullshit, okay? It's complete horseshit. They've been selling this lie as long as the party's been around. We cut taxes and everything gets better. But there's so much heinous shit buried in that fucking bill. Pardon my language. There's so much heinous, awful stuff buried in their bill. My God, did you hear they're going to take the space shuttle from the Smithsonian and ship it to Texas because Ted Cruz wanted it? They're going to spend $85 million federal dollars to give Ted Cruz's home state a space shuttle of their own. Take it from the American people. This is the kind of shit that's in that bill. And no, it's not going to be good for us. It's not going to be good for anybody. That's a fact. So look, I wanted to go, we're going to start off. Look, you heard about the bill pass. It's 4th of July. Happy 4th of July. I am so excited to be here with you. I know it's 4th of July night. Hopefully you're out looking at fireworks, coming back to watch this later. If not, great. California, it's only 4 o'clock. I am Fred One. This is Moxie FP1. I'm right here on the Midas Touch Network. I want to talk about Republican lies, right? The lies that sold this bill, but I want to talk about some lies you haven't seen. You probably see a lot of clips here on the network, right? You see Asen, God bless him, and the team, Ron and everybody clipping these. You'll see a couple of them. But I wanted to also talk to some stuff you haven't seen. Of course, that's my world. I'm a veteran, as you know. I served for 22 years in the United States Army. The VA and the DOD are doing some really terrible, terrible things. You haven't heard about it. And they're lying about it. They're lying to our service members. And you may not hear about those because there's so many other things. RFK Jr. and Kristi Noem and her matching MAGA hat and the Alcatraz in Florida, all those things. And so there's things flying in there. So there's Republican lies and administration lies that are going to hurt America. So what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight, as you know, as we're sitting here, Donald Trump's in Washington, D.C., celebrating the 4th of July. I heard he's going to bring some of the B-2 pilots they bombed Iran, bring them up there to, I call it patriotism, okay? So we're going to counter program that a little bit, let you know what he's really, let him know what you're really doing to veterans, what they're really doing to our service members or families. So let's talk about those things. We'll start off with the big bill, and then we'll talk about VA, we'll talk about DOD a little bit. I'll let you go enjoy your night. Again, I am Fred Wellman, host of Moxie. This exclusively right here on the Midas Touch Network. Now over 5 million subscribers. Gotta love that. Let's get on with the show. Oh, welcome. I am Fred Wellman, still after the music. It's so good to have you with me. I hope you're here tonight. Hopefully I'm not alone because it's 4th of July. In the meantime, let's talk about things that are going on. So the big ugly bill passed, and it passed on some really heinous lies. I want to show you this clip. We're going to talk about this really ugly thing. I talked about it in a video yesterday a little bit, but I want to talk to you guys about it too, in case you hadn't seen it. This is for the debate on Thursday. This is Steve's, well, I call it debate. I'm sorry. I'm delusional. This is when the Republicans listened to Hakeem Jeffries, then said what the fuck they wanted to say and passed the bill anyway. But here's Steve Scalise.
If you're disabled on Medicaid right now, you've been crowded out of those programs by people turning down work. Able-bodied people, 35-year-olds sitting at home playing video games. They're going to now have to go get a job. That's right. And by the way, that's a good thing for them. Their mom doesn't want them sitting in the basement playing video games anyway. But now it no longer will be crowding out Medicaid for the truly needy people who deserve it.
Those 35-year-olds playing video games. Have you heard that one a lot lately? Because that's the new thing they're using. You see, in the old days, here, let me show you what the Republicans used to. And if you're old enough like me, and a lot of my audiences, I know you guys are my age, older, the same, I don't know, but you may remember this one. You remember this bit? Yeah, the welfare queen. This is Ronald Reagan's favorite bit. This started in the 70s and 80s when Ronald Reagan was giving speeches. And he talked about actually this specific woman. Now, she was a Chicago, I'm not going to bring her name up, who was poor, and she figured out she could get welfare benefits if she used different names. According to Ronald Reagan, this welfare queen, who's just having babies and living off the government dime, made millions of dollars ripping off the government. Well, as it turns out, it was about $9,000, and she didn't get rich. She ended up going to jail. But that became a trope for the Republicans for much of the 1980s and in the 90s, the welfare queen. And they mean black women, y'all. And when it became too obviously fucking racist to get away with that, they had to change their tune. And they couldn't just say welfare queens. So the modern Republican Party, they've come up with the lazy 35-year-old male laying around his house on the couch, not working. That's their thing now, okay? And you've heard it multiple times in the debate. I literally found at least 7 to 8 clips of Republican members of Congress and the Senate saying, well, those lazy people who work and getting free medical care, and they're gonna have to work now. And that's the trope they've been using. Of course, get a job, right? Obviously, that makes sense. Get a job, you don't have to work on it. But let's talk about that for a second, because you and I know out here in the real world, that's not how it works. Because out in the real world, you can have a job and still need Medicaid. How do I know? Well, our friend Bernie Sanders actually did a study. In 2020, he had the Government Accountability Office do an actual study on federal social safety net programs and how many people were using them and where they're working. And what they found out in 2020, not all states report their Medicaid if they're employed or not, but what they did find, the states that reported, guess what happened, y'all? Guess what company is the #1 employer of people on federal assistance? I think you know already. Walmart, followed closely by McDonald's. They swap places. In the top 5 in this study, full-time employees of Walmart, McDonald's, Kroger, Amazon, and Dollar General were most likely to be working full-time and still not make enough money to qualify, to not qualify, if you will, for Medicaid and food nutrition benefits. So this idea that there's these lazy people laying around on couches, taking up benefits is a completely false. And let's see the studies on that, okay? Let's see the studies that shows that. What they're doing is they're just cutting it money. And by the way, the whole argument's undermined by the fact that they wanted, what, 85 billion cut, but the Republicans and Senate wanted 100 billion. There's no study. 17 million people are going to lose their health care benefits across the country because of this bullshit, with this lie that there just ain't enough to go around. There's just not enough medical care to go around. That able-bodied people who are just getting free medical care, and they want you to think it's a check they're getting. No, it's medical care. The persons aren't, the people using it aren't getting paid. You don't get a check from the government for your medical care. The doctor does. The insurance company does. But they don't want you to know that. And that's the big lie that got this bill passed in a lot of ways and makes so many Republicans. Every time you mention this bill, my mentions are flooded by these asshole MAGA chuds telling me, well, all them illegal immigrants getting health care. Okay. It's illegal for immigrants to not get Medicare or Medicaid. States that do provide a form of Medicaid for immigrants, undocumented immigrants, like New York and California, pay for that exclusively with state funds, not federal, because it's prohibited. But they don't want you to know that. They want you to think there's all this money going to people who don't do it, and it's all a lie. What's going to happen is, and by the way, you got to love the timing. This Medicare cuts, the Medicaid cuts, they don't kick in until after the midterm. So these assholes aren't going to kick their own constituents off medical care until after they get reelected. Clever, huh? But good news, guys. The billionaires' tax cut kick in right now. So the billionaires are good. But that's not the only lies going on. Let's talk about my world, my life that I live, veteran, military. There's this guy. I'm going to show you a video of this guy. And you know, there's so many rats in this government. It's hard to keep track of them all. But this guy is Doug Collins. Maybe you haven't seen a lot of him if you're not following veteran stuff. You might not. Doug is the Secretary of VA. He's a former congressman from Georgia. He's a good old boy. He was a chaplain in the Air Force. He wants you to think he was door-kicking, kick-ass guy, but chaplains don't even carry weapons. Let's not go down that road. And Air Force chaplains never leave the fob. But don't worry, he's got pictures of him in the dirt. But this is Doug Collins. And this, what people know about Doug Collins is, one, he's dumb. Two, he's a liar. And three, he covers it all by being an asshole. This is when he was questioned. Recently, there's a story of The Guardian from my friend Aaron Glantz that someone highlighted. Veterans advocates had noticed that the Veterans Health Administration had changed their bylaws for their hospital guidance, taking out protections for patients, for non-discrimination against patients based on political affiliation, gender, and sexual orientation and others. They just took them out of the bylaws. They updated the bylaws and took that out. And the VA has been on the rampage trying to deny this is the case, but it's a fact. They came out. The words came out. And their argument is that, well, it's okay because other things. But this is when Senator Murray asked Doug Collins, I want you to see not just his words, but watch this guy react when being questioned.
This is exactly what, and I appreciate you taking my own words, because it's about time that somebody up here actually decided that they were not going to continue to repeat false things that keep people and veterans from actually trusting the VA. And by bringing this up again, which was a Guardian article, which, by the way, two major publications, the Post and Times, others who looked into this said there's nothing there. But the Guardian, who wanted clickbait, decided to run with something, and then it was amplified, is scaring veterans. And if they're concerned, because also understand something, no, let me finish this, because this is important. See, I've been accused of this. It's not scaring. Nothing was changed that actually affected it. This is the problem we're seeing. Title V USO Code 2302 prevents discrimination based on marital status, political affiliation. 7102 participation rights and barring interference with those rights, all there. VHA Directive 1019 governing all medical services provided by VA and prohibits discrimination on the basis of marital status or political affiliation. There's nothing changed. By the way, our bylaws also don't say that we have to feed our patients 3 times a day. Should we put that in there specifically?
Well, Mr. Secretary.
No, I'm not going to let you get away with this.
I'm going to tell. I have the floor for a second.
No, I mean,
let me
you're not
tell you.
truthful with this.
What I'm telling you is what veterans hear and what Americans hear. Please listen.
I'm not going to let you get away with this. He's lying. They took the words out. And whether or not federal law covers or not, why the fuck did they take the words out? If it's no big deal, why did they go to all the effort to go into their bylaws, delete the words protecting sexual orientation and political affiliation? Anyway, that's what's such horseshit. Sure, it doesn't necessarily change anything. Doctors are never going to violate their oath. There are professional standards social workers and psychiatrists have to follow. But then why change it? And that's Doug Collins. And the way he does is he blames the media. You're scaring my veterans. He's the one doing this. He's the one announced they're going to cut 83,000 employers. Now, and this is the payoff. Check out this article. This article came out in CNN this week. Yeah, sense of doom. That's literally the term. A sense of doom among VA health workers as they fear worsening shortages and staffing cuts. This story is unbelievable. Doctors and nurses at VA hospitals morale has plunged. More than a dozen medical professionals, okay? Talk to CNN for the story. It's a long story. It's paywalled. Don't worry about it. But they're worried the staff being let off. So what's happened is he's going to cut 15% of the staff. Now, he hasn't said when. He hasn't said who. But he announced 2 months ago that they're going to reduce the workforce by 83,000 people. But they don't know who. But they say it's not going to be doctors. So what's happening, though, is they're laying off people like housekeepers, support staff, the laundry service, dietary staff. They call these admins. They're bureaucrats that have gone up. And what they're trying to say is that while veterans have added to the thing, they haven't added more health workers because the health workers can't be hired because there's not enough in this country. So now they've got doctors doing things like changing their own sheets, changing the paper in their room, prepping rooms instead of doing healthcare. Okay. That's what's going on. And morale is in the shitter there. Supplies have gone unordered, appointments are going unscheduled, medical staff fear might only encourage doctors leave. And that's what we're hearing. An astounding number of doctors and nurses are leaving right now from VA. Astounding number have left. and it's happening. And look, they're going to say it's all lies. And I could go on with this, but it's a long story. But they're lying. They've got their own little part of it, how they're taking care of veterans. But I'm talking, I'll give you some quotes. Well, let's show a couple quotes, and then I'll talk about my friend and what they're telling me. Because my friends, this is not true. Here is the best place for you to find out what's going on in the government. By the way, here's a little secret for those of you who follow this stuff. You want to know what's really going on in the federal government? Reddit. Go to Reddit, because on Reddit, the truth is being told. Here's a veteran statement. So this is a veteran who spoke the other day. He talks about how there's finally seeing. He had a follow-up appointment with the specialist postponed until November. He was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, but every time he's gone to see somebody, now he's finding out that doctors are gone. So the doctor who's supposed to see has quit. Okay. So this is what you do in an organization. When you really want to get rid of people, what you do, you don't necessarily have to fire them. You can simply, announce you're going to fire people and let the good ones leave. Because look, there's a shortage of doctors and nurses everywhere in America. Everywhere in America. So they can get jobs. Why would they put up with this kind of bullshit? And many of them do this because they want to serve our veterans. But why? Then this is the effect. Veteran can't get a follow-up appointment with the specialist because the specialist is gone. Here's another one. 3 months for my first VA mental health appointment, but my psychologist has already left the VA. Okay. And we've heard from many people. I get calls all the time. I get text messages, signal messages. FP Wellman 16. That's FP Wellman.16 on Signal. Remember that? I get calls all the time. People telling me how they are facing all kinds of challenges. And that when they meet their psychiatrist or psychologist for an appointment, they literally often say goodbye to each other because the psychiatrist or the psychologist can't guarantee they're going to be there for the next appointment. That's how a lot of my friends tell me their mental health and doctor's appointments are ending now. The physician, the healthcare provider is saying, hopefully I'll still be here the next time you come. Imagine that. Okay. You're a VA. You've worked your ass off. You're trying to take care of our American, our veterans, our service members, and you can't even be sure that you're going to be there when they need you anymore, thanks to Doug Collins and his lies. Okay. So morale is indeed plummeting. Here's another one. This is a person, I just left the VA for the last time, never looking back. They took the DRP, if you don't need to know what those are, but the early retirement options, because they offered early retirement to a bunch of people and then kept changing the rules. But now what's happening is a lot of the supervisors and the administrative staff that they hate so much are leaving, and they're discovering you actually need supervisors and administrative staff to run a fucking hospital. And look at this guy. I mean, imagine this guy. They try everything they can to help veterans, and they're just done. Look at what he's saying. How Ruckins said the decision was based entirely on ongoing negative rhetoric being shared at the national level. Morale is at its lowest ever is a no-brainer. That's what Doug Collins is doing. That's what he's doing. And that's what they're doing to our veterans. And it's a lie to say it won't affect our veterans, because obviously it is. How can it not? When you're a provider, can't guarantee they're going to be there, you're going to lose veterans. Okay. That's just how it is. But this is Doug. So he had I love this story. I'll leave him alone. He had a town hall a couple weeks ago. It was broadcast to all the different VA employees. It went so badly. Usually what they do is they post it out publicly very quickly and they clip it up and they send it out. It was so badly run that Doug was such a dick to everybody. He was so rude. This is for his own employees. He badmouthed the suicide prevention programs they've had, say they don't work. He badmouthed the homelessness programs, everything you can imagine, badmouthed the staff. But this is the only clip that they could come up with to put out publicly.
I believe in our research. We do some of the best research work and very specific research work. There's been a lot of discussion on contracts, and please don't, again, read and believe it. A lot of these contracts are, and a lot of our research is on a rotating basis, and some are being renewed through other means or other assets. We're wanting to keep all of ours going. One that I'm very particularly proud of is our research into the psychedelic issue. In fact, I was just at the Bronx just the other day discussing MDMA therapies, which have been phenomenal in working with those with PTS and traumatic brain injuries, these other issues that we have. I know there's some others going on there's about 11 or 12 in the VA right now. So that's the things that I see, research being able to provide not only help for veterans today, but also encouraging us to find not only things that will help veterans of the future, but also that will be helpful to the general public as well. So research, I believe that education is the magic bullet for all of us. The more we know, the better off we are. And I want to see that continue to happen in the VA.
Let's talk research. I don't have the headline, damn it. But remember they cut ties with Harvard? That was a big thing. Had to cut ties with Harvard. Harvard was running the largest cancer study in America through the VA with active participants, veterans being active participants. They killed it. They've killed so much research at VA that the only thing that asshole could come up with was a random MDMA study on PTSD, because everything else is gone. Cancer, sleep deprivation. They had a nutrition study going long-term. They had the longest long-term study of nutrition and its impact on stress and suicidality. Killed it. Over and over and over. He's lying. You could tell because he's talking. But that's what's going on at the VA. Let's talk to our sponsors real quick. I've got great sponsors, and we'll come back and I'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on for our veterans and service members. And as you watch the July 4th insanity, keep all this stuff in mind. I'll be right back. You know, I think I've told you guys before that I was raised in a Marine household. My father was a veteran of World War II, and I grew up with guns in our house. And I was taught from a very young age to respect weapons, as deadly as they can be, but also as important they are to our life and our protection, our safety, and our rights in America. But very young, I was taught to secure them safely, store them out of reach of children, and make sure if you do need them, you can reach them. But even more importantly, the wrong hands can't get their hands on them. And then I went on from there and I joined the Army, and I taught my kids the same thing. And that's why I'm so passionate about Stopbox and proud to have them as a sponsor for the show, because, you know, owning a handgun comes with real responsibility. You need to secure, but also accessible. And then it matters most when you need it. Too often, that means choosing between locking it away or leaving it out, vulnerable to kids or guests or even intruders. And that's the problem that Stopbox USA set out to solve. And they nailed it with the Stopbox Pro. Look, it's 100% mechanical, it's keyless, it's a battery-free lockbox that gives you instant controlled access to your firearm. There's no electronics or key codes required. No keys, no remember. If you're panicked, it's simply available to you if you need it. So that's why we love it. They're just a patented 5-button locking system that responds to your unique input. It's fast, intuitive, and built for muscle memory. So with Stopbox Pro, you don't have to trade safety for speed or peace of mind for readiness. Your firearm, if you need it, is secure, but within reach. So there's a lot to love about Stopbox USA. It's that USA part that I like. Here's a big thing right now, right? We've talked about in the show. You never have to worry about tariffs because everything is sourced right here in the United States. All Stopbox products are probably made in the USA in their own facility. Not only does it ensure that it's a high quality craftsmanship of every product they send you, but it creates meaningful jobs and opportunities for American workers. So here's the deal, y'all. For a limited time only, our listeners are getting a crazy deal on Stopbox. You can get 10% off your entire order when you use code FRED10. And for even better savings, you can shop their bundles for the best deals in their best-selling products. Check out their bundles and save an exclusive 10% off site-wide when you use code FRED10. So go to StopboxUSA.com. Discover a better way to balance security and readiness to Stopbox. And believe me, folks, go ahead and use my code FRED10. It's worth it. Protect your friends and family and your peace of mind. Thanks, Stopbox, for sponsoring the show. You know, it's heating up now here in the Midwest, and I need clothes that fit right and don't make the heat worse, right? I'm too old to chase trends, but I am all about stuff that fits right, feels good, and actually lasts. That's why I keep coming back to Quints. Their lightweight layers and high-quality staples have become my everyday essentials. And they have the kind of stuff you actually wear on repeat, like breathable flow knit polos, crisp cotton shirts like this one, comfortable, lightweight pants that somehow work for my weekend hangouts at concerts or meetings and for dressed up dinners, because that's what I do these days. And the best part for me is that everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middlemen, Quince gives you the luxury pieces without all the markups. Quince only works with factories that are safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturers and premium fabrics and finishes. So I don't do a lot of business meetings anymore, folks. I mean, I need comfortable, casual clothes that I can throw on, head to a concert, a shoot an interview like this. Quince nails that for me. They're comfortable, stylish, flattering, and what I like the most, super easy. I love the lightweight, breathable fabric of the polos and these shirts. I wear them on repeat. So I want you to stick to the staples that last with elevated essentials from Quince. Now go to quince.com/Fred for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Fred to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Again, I hope you guys will do this. That's quince.com/Fred. Thanks, Quince, for being a sponsor show. That's the cool clothes. I'm glad you waited. So, I should drink. That's what's going on. So while Trump is sitting here, piling on this weekend, while they're celebrating up at the big stupid bill, remember that they're quietly destroying and dismantling so many of the safety nets that we need. Hundreds of thousands of veterans rely on food assistance. Hundreds of thousands of veterans rely on Medicaid because their services aren't available to them at the VA. And more services are going. Hundreds of veterans, thousands of veterans. So one of the biggest things they want to talk about is community care. Doug loves community care because they're trying to dismantle the VA. The goal here is for VA to collapse. They're going to lie and tell you yesterday. The goal is to collapse the system so they can privatize the whole fucking thing. That's the goal. And they love this idea. But the problem is most veterans don't actually live within 70 miles of a VA hospital. They live in rural areas, believe it or not. And rural hospitals are going to fail because they just cut Medicare and Medicaid. All this is going to hurt veterans, and they're not telling the truth. But wait, there's more, because we also have our friends in the in the rest of the government. Let's talk about the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Remember those guys, CFPB? One of the biggest things the CFPB did, they were very proud of, from the very beginning, was they had an entire division dedicated to taking care of veterans and military service members who were being misused. This had to do with for-profit university colleges, had to do with banks taking advantage of us. The payday lenders were under. They've done a lot of things to target the people taking advantage of our service members. It's been a huge part of that. Matter of fact, by the way, one of those, that the CFPB and Education Department were involved in was turning back the 90-10 rule. And this has been repealed in the big bad bill. Now, the 90-10 rule is pretty complicated, but I'll keep it very simple for you. What we discovered was that these for-profit universities, Phoenix University and others, were getting all of their money from GI Bill. Students using the modern GI Bill. And they're just churning out degrees. Many of them completely useless degrees. They're useless degrees. People couldn't even get jobs with them. So a rule was put in that said 90% only, think about that number for a second, only 90% of a for-profit school or any school could get 90% of their revenue from federal dollars, be it federal student aid or the GI Bill. And they had to have at least 10% of their money came from other means. In other words, actually people paying proper tuition. How hard could it be? 10%. Buried in the big bad bill? Guess what? They repealed the 90-10 rule. But that's not all. They got rid of the CFPB, right? Check this out. So, several years ago, our friends at Navy Federal Credit Union, I'm a member, I don't have a problem with that. Navy Federal Credit Union had got in trouble because it turned out they were illegally using overdraft fees against their members to the tune of over $80 million in profits against their own service members, service member families, and veteran members of the largest credit union in America. And because of that, the CFPB went to court, sued them, and they won a judgment against Navy Federal Credit Union to the tune of $80 million in refunds to members of the Federal Credit Union and a $15 million fine to the federal government. This week, the new CFPB under Russell Vought dismissed the whole case and let Navy Federal Credit Union walk away. So all those service members, all those veterans who got ripped off by their own credit union and who was held accountable by the federal government, have now been let off the hook. So now all those service members and their families get nothing. Navy Federal Credit Union gets to keep the money. That's a perfect example. That's the quiet things, the lies they're telling you. And the punch of that story is, back in March, they announced a great fanfare that CFPB was not really going away, but they're going to focus exclusively on important things like people taking advantage of veterans and service members. And the result of that 3 months later is letting those people off the hook. Because the real people that are here to help is the banks, not us. But wait, there's more. Over DOD, they've quietly been dismantling all the systems that go into supporting our military members that aren't war fighting. So this is the clever little game they're playing. I'll give you an example of one. They already announced they're going to cut the DoD education system's funding substantially in the staff. They're cutting a number of people to include special education assistants and more. They're going to have a counselor now. Just this week, the Army quietly announced they're cutting a 5-year contract that gave mental health care for military kids and their family members overseas. This is the same time a study came out this year showing that the risk of suicide and depression has increased dramatically among kids and service member family members overseas. They quietly cut to save $5 million. $5 million in a $450 billion budget. $5 million that provides mental health care to our family members of our service members. But there's even dumber one. Do you like animals? Well, the Army has a long tradition of having equine programs and donkeys. For example, my alma mater, West Point, has the Army donkeys. There, the picture you see there is at Fort Hood, Texas. That's the Fort Hood, Texas, because they're a cavalry unit. It's now Fort Hood again. It was Fort Cavazos. But those guys from the 1st Cavalry Division are famous. They have an incredible horse riding team that does public demonstrations. It's a huge morale thing that raises the morale of the unit. They use them during runs and stuff. They're getting rid of all of them. The only equine or horse support programs they're going to have is the old guard caissons and the caisson teams in San Antonio. Every other program, including those beautiful horses you see right there in the parade, are being gotten rid of to save a whopping $2 million. That's the kind of things they're doing. This is their version of saving money, okay? Is taking away morale programs, taking away support programs for our troops, taking away support programs for their family members. So as you see on July 4th today, and waving the flags and saying how much they love the troops, the truth is in the headlines, folks. The truth is quietly being done by Pete Hegseth, who loves the troops. He runs them every day. He likes the white ones. At the same time, if military kids commit suicide, that's the price of business. If horses get sold off, whatever. They save $2 million. That's how much Trump spends on one golf trip. That's what's priority for this group. They're getting rid of health care for our military kids. They're getting mental health care for our kids at the cost of one of Trump's golf trips. That's what we face. So as you see Trump and the Republicans having their wonderful 4th of July Independence Day weekend, remember, the truth of the matter is they don't give a flying shit about anybody but themselves. They don't care about our troops, and they sure as hell don't care about their health, because I'm one of the troops, and I know for a fact they don't give a fuck about me. Forgive my drop F-bombs this week. It's been a grumpy week, needless to say. Glad you're here. I hope you're here. If you're not, we'll see you next week. I'm Fred Willman. As always, we have Too Late to Cancel every Sunday. We are taking this Sunday off because it's 4th of July weekend. But we'll be back next Sunday. That's live on the On Demoxy channels. We've got so much going on. I hope you'll go. You can get our shows wherever you get your podcast, wherever. I'd love you, absolutely love you. Consider following my Substack, fpwellman.substack.com. Putting on a lot of new content on there every day now, just about. So it's fpwellman.substack.com. It is free, although if you get paid subscription helps pay the way for all this work. Again, I hope you're having a wonderful Independence Day weekend as much as you can this crazy time. It is important to remember it's our flag, not theirs. I'm very proud that I've served under it. I'm very proud to fly the flag. It's our flag. They don't own it. In the meantime, we'll see you again next week right here on the Midas Touch Network. I'm Fred Wellman. Thanks for joining us for On Democracy. I can't wait to see you again.